name's Tom Robinette. I'm the Vice President of Public Policy and Advocacy for the Overland Park Chamber of Commerce. And it's my pleasure to welcome you here to this evening's event. On behalf of the Johnson County Public Policy Council and tonight's host, the Northeast Johnson County Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to thank you for attending the House District 25 Candidate Forum tonight. I will start off by introducing our candidates. We'll go in alphabetical order, beginning with Representative Melissa Rooker. Melissa is completing her third term representing District 25 in the Kansas House. She grew up in Fairway and is a graduate of Shawnee Mission East High School and the University of Kansas, where she earned a bachelor's degree in fine arts. After marrying her husband Tom and living and working in the film industry in California, they moved back to her old neighborhood in 2001 to take advantage of the quality of life and great public education in raising their two children, Lindsay and Jack. Since then, Melissa has been very active, volunteering at various organizations throughout the community. We also have Ree Hsu. Ree was born in Switzerland. He moved to the United States when he was 2 years old and became a naturalized citizen at the age of 12. He moved to the Kansas City area shortly after graduating from the University of Southern California, where he earned his degree in economics. He's worked as a marketing analyst, most recently with Children International, an international nonprofit located here in Kansas City. Ree and his wife Kirsha live in Westwood. The format for this evening's forum will include 4-minute opening statements by each candidate, followed by individual question and answer, 2.5 minutes for each candidate to respond, followed by a 3-minute closing statement from each candidate. During the Q&A, candidates will each answer the same questions. The questions have been prepared in advance by chamber staff and not shared with the candidates prior to this event. There will be no follow-up or audience participation this evening. Candidates have drawn numbers in advance to determine the speaking order, which will rotate throughout the program. So with that, we will begin with opening statements. Candidates will have 4 minutes each, and Ree, I believe you're first.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for being here. Last week I was thanking people for being here at forums despite the terrible weather. This week, thank you for being here despite the amazing weather outside and giving up a little bit of daylight. So, like Tom said, my name is Ree Hsu. I'm the Democratic candidate here in House District 25. I was born in Switzerland, moved here when I was 2 years old. So I was actually born in Switzerland because my parents were pursuing their PhDs there. And so because of China's one-child policy, they were no longer able to move back home because of that. I had an older sister there, and they just wouldn't have been able to get the jobs available to them. I grew up in an amazing little town called Rolla, Missouri, a town of about 15,000 people with amazing public schools. I met Kirsha there when I was 14 years old. She was playing percussion in the back in band class. I was playing the saxophone and just decided to ask the cute girl in the back out, and then we've been together ever since. I naturalized to be a U.S. citizen in the 7th grade. That was literally the only day of school that I missed between 3rd and 12th grade. I don't know if you guys have heard the Chinese tiger mom stereotype, but that is my mother to a T. That is the only day that she would allow me to miss school. I studied economics in college at the University of Southern California. I had to get as far away from Rolla as possible, as 18-year-old boys tend to do, and so I went out to Los Angeles, studied economics, graduated, and moved back to get married to Kirsha. My first job out of college was with Sporting Kansas City. I was a performance analyst there for 3 years. Any of you guys have seen the movie Moneyball? I was kind of like Jonah Hill in that movie, kind of following the coach around. I'm currently at Children International, which is an amazing organization. Everybody should look into it. I don't think enough people in the city know about it, but I'm really, really proud to live there. I got into this because I just couldn't do nothing anymore. You know, after 2016, I kind of realized that there are a lot of people out there putting their time and their effort and their money fighting against the things that I love most about this country, which is equality, diversity, and I don't think that I did enough before to fight for those things, to stand up for the things that I love most. And so I guess I kind of realized that active bad beats passive good every single time, but that also luckily that active good beats active bad every single time. And so that's why I decided to jump into this. Again, thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate the dialogue.
through the biography, Tom, because that saves a little time. I think that my roots here in the community are well known and are part of what drove all of the choices made since moving back in 2004. First, to delve into the PTA as a volunteer. I am working my way up through the ranks and becoming PTA president at Indian Hills, which led to time spent doing advocacy work in Topeka as a volunteer mom. So we got involved in Topeka advocacy during the Great Recession when cuts were happening to our schools over and over again. So I engaged with a group that we dubbed the Cookie Baking Mamas, because we would go and make trips to Topeka and lobby our lawmakers. I then spent my time back here at home as an officer in the Shawinigan Area Council PTA, working on parent engagement, because what I learned is the importance of connecting the dots for people. Parents upset at rising class sizes and shrinking programs needed to understand it wasn't the principal at their school they needed to be upset with. It wasn't even the school board that was voting to make those changes. It was actually their lawmakers in Topeka. So connecting those dots and drawing parents in, making sure they understood the power of registering to vote and being active in our elections has been part of my DNA really almost since I moved back here, but certainly for more than a decade. It's the strength of that advocacy work that led to my involvement as an elected official. I actually never even ran for student council when I was in school. Elected office was not part of my game plan in life, to something to do before things were over. It happened because the mapping project in 2012 led to our seat being open, and my lawmaker, who I was very happy with, Barbara Bollier, was the state representative at the time, called me and said, "You've got to consider doing this." So with 18 hours notice, I filed to run for office. If I'd had more time, I might have thought twice and maybe not done it. But it was a chance that I embraced, because I was at a point where my kids were pretty well grown. My daughter was already in college. My son was about to enter his senior year in high school. So I had my time back to consider a new role in life for me, what that next step looked like. Running for office and being an elected official has been one of my great privileges. It's been an amazing experience to work in that environment, to shift from the advocacy side of things, where you're going and asking lawmakers to think about making different decisions, to actually having the vote and being capable of making those choices on our own. There is a lot to discuss tonight. A lot that is swirling in the media, a lot of questions about my intentions, my priorities, and my values. I'm going to run out of time in a second, so now is not the appropriate opportunity. But I want to make clear that when half-truths are used, when the worst tactics of DC-style politics are used to twist the truth into something that suits a narrative that outside special interests want to do, and I want to be clear, it hasn't been my opponent with this particular issue moving this narrative necessarily, but people surrounding him in a universe that's trying to support him are really misrepresenting my record of service, my intention, and my morality. So I would like to quote Van Jones and just tell you that no matter what, I will continue to fight for the moral center, not the political center. I will continue to seek common ground, not the middle ground. So I look forward to questions and the chance to visit with you all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will move on to the question and answer period. As a reminder, these questions were prepared by the Johnson County Public Policy Council based on input we received from chamber members across the county. We have not shared the specific questions with the candidates prior to this evening's forum. So we will start, and the first question is, what are your views on state tax policy? Melissa, you're first up.
Thank you, Tom. Well, we've done a lot of heavy lifting in Topeka to right the ship where tax policy is concerned, and it was a 5-year battle that involved a lot of heartache, a lot of really tough decision making, and it took building a coalition that wasn't just 63 members of the House and 21 senators. It was 84 and 27, a veto override majority to override the governor. This was his signature legislative achievement, this 2012 tax plan. And as lawmakers, we had to come together and we had to build a plan that put the state of Kansas back on the right path. It involved a lot of compromise and work to bring people together with different ideas. We had a group that wanted to do nothing because they loved the tax cuts. The group that wanted full repeal of every ounce. There was a group that wanted a flat tax, a group that wanted to add a multi-tiered system. Getting everybody on the same page to get the policy that we got, which is proving to bring revenues in that are upholding the budget that we passed, was an amazing legislative feat and actually at one point seemed impossible. So now our job is to protect that progress and help the state grow and heal from the decade of neglect, first from the Great Recession and later from the Brownback tax plan. We do have work that we need to evaluate a few things. There were changes at the federal level. We did not have enough data to make any informed decisions at the end of session. So when we go back, we need to evaluate what those changes have done in conjunction with Kansas tax policy, because we have some things that are coupled with federal law, some things that maybe aren't coupled. We need to understand how Kansas taxpayers are affected at their state level. We also need to evaluate what we can do with the very regressive food sales tax, because that hits everybody hard, but the working poor the hardest. And it has been, I voted against that tax increase when it happened, and I absolutely want to make sure that we take care of that. Itemized deductions, there's all sorts of things that we need to take a look at. There's also talk about, it will depend on which governor we end up with, because one of the candidates would like to put more of a restriction on local property taxes, and there are just a lot of things in the mix. So.
Thank you. Reed, what are your views on state tax policy?
Yeah, I would totally agree that we're in a better place than where we were, which was a disaster in the Sam Brownback years. We've been able to stabilize in many, many ways, and so that's been beneficial. For our next estimates are coming in above where we thought they would be, and so that'll be enough for us to fund school funding, which is the #1 issue, as well as start to put some more money back into the departments that have been swept, seen their budgets swept the most under the Brownback years. The other thing that we can do is I think that we need to look at expanding the number of tax brackets here in the state. Right now there are only 3 tax brackets, so that means if you're an individual making over $30,000 or a couple making over $60,000, you are in the exact same highest marginal tax rate as the Koch brothers, which strikes me as wrong. That's 2 teachers versus the Koch brothers paying the exact same highest marginal tax rate. I think we can move to a more progressive system, and I think that would do a lot to further stabilize and bring in revenues that we can use to invest in other areas as well. We also need to eliminate the food sales tax here in the state. It is high, it is regressive. In this district, in House District 25, we're so close to the border that a lot of people, I know some of you guys do it, we just hop over the border to Missouri and go to Trader Joe's or Costco and get our groceries there and save a little bit on that. They're also very, very regressive, especially for people on fixed and low incomes, and so that means a higher proportion of their incomes are going towards food and essentials, which I think is wrong. I would also extend that to other basic essentials. I think we could eliminate the sales tax on feminine hygiene products as well, which kind of falls in the same general category.
Okay, thank you. Ree, you'll be the first one to respond to question number 2. With record low unemployment rates challenging businesses' ability to find enough employees, what would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
The first thing that we have to do is fully fund our education. Not only does funding education give us smarter and more talented and better workers, more skilled workers to go into the workforce, it also entices businesses and people to move to Kansas. And so I think that would go a long way in terms of bringing more workers here in terms of unemployment. The other thing that we really, really need to do is rehabilitate our reputation in the national sphere. I think if you ask people from other states how they view us, they would view us as blood red, Brownbackistan, discriminatory, and that doesn't do us any favors when we're trying to recruit really talented people to move here. And so if we can do things like pass a statewide non-discrimination ordinance that also protects LGBT and transgender citizens, I think that would go a long way towards that. We also need to look at the rhetoric regarding immigration here in the state. Obviously, Chris Kobach is kind of one of the leaders in terms of anti-immigration rhetoric, and we need to make sure that he is not elected and that Laura Kelly is elected so that we can continue to grow our reputation in the national sphere. And hopefully this election year, with a lot of the amazing candidates, goes towards part of that reparation. So those would be my ideas.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, would you like me to repeat?
We're
question?
talking about how to grow the
What
workforce.
would you do to grow and develop the workforce?
Well, businesses tell me that they need steady regulatory and financial environment to be able to grow. Kansas, when we invest in things like education and infrastructure, we're investing in that environment. When we have stable tax policy and a balanced budget, we are creating certainty to give our businesses the climate in which they can grow and thrive. In recent years, the state's financial situation has been very unpredictable. We kind of addressed that with the tax policy in 2017. The tax structure that we put in place now gives a steady structure for businesses to build on. Reinvesting in education is key to workforce development, so making a commitment to fund the plan that we put in place is key. Investing in the workforce development programs that our schools partner in, the career and tech ed programs, is crucial. The community college network can help build that network out. Making sure that our kids know they have choices that lead straight into the workforce out of high school if four-year university isn't for them is also part of that structure. Over time, I've been proud to support a number of measures that have helped stabilize the business environment. We've got some transparency and equity in the regulatory process. We moved a bill that helps provide, we have to evaluate the cost of new regulations before they're implemented, and that will help us determine if what we're doing becomes burdensome to businesses. We enacted the Astra Rural Jobs Act that is designed to help spur development in our rural communities, and we extended the sunset date on our Star Bond system. That's been a huge factor in the Wyandotte County area and certain other centers in the state, which has drawn business and grown and developed communities that were otherwise hurting. So we've done a lot. We have more to do. We need to maintain the stability, and we need to help ensure that businesses know what they're dealing with when they're coming to Kansas.
Okay, thank you. Now, question number 3, Melissa, you'll be first on this one. Topeka appears poised to refocus on the state's infrastructure. What would your priorities be in any new statewide transportation plan?
Safety. We have a lot of issues that are created by congestion, by deteriorating road conditions, by design problems, and by just age, wear and tear. They all contribute to safety problems. So I would address safety number 1. We need to make sure that our communities have the connectivity they need. So in rural communities, that means the ability to move goods to market in an efficient manner. So there's a lot of drama between Johnson County needs as a population center and rural needs because there's so few people, but they drive a huge part of the Kansas economy. Ag is number 1. The next thing that I would do after making sure that we have safe routes that are properly maintained and constructed is I would make sure that we're looking at all transit options. Everything should be on the table. Aviation is the second largest factor of the state economy, so making sure we wrap in aviation considerations, rail considerations, both commercial product transportation and passenger transportation. Public transit should be part of it. How does bus routes, or how do pedestrian walkways and bike paths factor into the design of roads going through communities? That all needs to be a factor. But crucial to all of this is making sure we we have a dedicated source of funding so we can pay for this plan. And finally, there has been a push. There's this weird move to eliminate expertise, and you see a move to eliminate professional design standards. I don't know about you, but I want to make sure that the roads and bridges that we travel on, that our loved ones travel on, are built by design professionals who are qualified to design those roads and engineer them so that they are safe. So protecting the quality-based design is crucial, and that's something that we've had to work to protect in recent years. So all of those things should be factored into the next long-range transportation plan.
Marie, what would your priorities be in a new statewide transportation plan?
Yeah, and so safety is definitely number one, making sure that our roads are maintained, that they're safe. To help deal with congestion issues, we can do things like expand 69 Highway here in the metro. I think as we see more urbanization in the national sphere and more people are moving to Johnson County, you're going to start seeing a lot more congestion. And so expanding 69 Highway would be one idea there. There's already a task force in place to examine this. It's T-Works 2020. And basically, I would just be interested in hearing first and foremost what they have to say. I know that they're looking at it very deeply, and we just have to make sure that they have the budget to do that, whether it's a gas tax or what have you. We need to make sure that whatever they recommend, that we have the budget that they need to make sure that they can execute their projects. One of the biggest downfalls of tax cuts to KDOT was stalled projects. When you don't know how much money you're going to have, you're not going to start projects, and then things just get worse and worse and worse from there. In terms of maintenance, a lot of the maintenance over the last couple of years have been paid through debt. And as a young person, I think about this a lot in terms of the national tax cuts as well, is that it seems like a lot of the current politicians are kind of okay with kicking debt down the line to younger people for us to deal with later. And I understand why they had to pay it with debt, but it's just, it would be concerning to me to have to deal with that later.
Okay, thank you. We just thought we'd slip an easy one here in the middle. So question number 4, and Marie, you're up first. What are your views on funding K-12 education?
So the good news is that for now, the Supreme Court has laid out very specifically what we need to do to achieve adequacy in school funding. And so we just need to put in the inflationary adjustments and we'll hit adequacy. I have some concerns over the equity portion of it. They say equitable under the current circumstances. But again, thinking about to my previous answer, we're seeing a lot more urbanization in the country worldwide, or the whole country. And so as more people move here from rural Kansas, we need to continue to examine that we remain equitable towards everybody. But the number one priority is just getting to constitutionality. That's number one. The bad news is that if you believe the polling, we have a 50-50 shot at a governor who will actually sign the school funding bill. Previous term, I was pretty disappointed that they weren't able to achieve that, because not only does it have to pass the House, not only does it have to pass the Senate, not only does the governor have to sign it, but the Supreme Court also has to approve it. And we had the first 3, we just weren't able to put in enough money to achieve that last one. This next term, we might not be able to get to the 3rd one, which is the governor that will sign it, which means we'll need 84 members of the House, which makes it a lot more difficult to pass a school funding bill. So my number one priority, I want to win this seat very, very badly, but if I could guarantee Laura Kelly win instead, I would 100% do that. I would give it all up to make sure Laura Kelly wins, because that is the most important election probably in Kansas history, or at least recent history. And so we just need to ensure I'm doing whatever I can to help Laura Kelly win. When I'm canvassing, I'm definitely talking about that race.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, your views on K-12 funding?
Well, I have always been a major supporter of full funding for our public schools. That has been my signature legislative policy focus area. And we have done monumental work moving the boulder up the hill, and whether you are happy that it took 2 legislative cycles or not, what we managed to do was reinvest $823 million new dollars into our K-12 public system over a 6-year cycle. We are in the second year of that phase-in. It amounts to an overall reinvestment of $3.2 billion that our schools will use to get caught up on where we should have been had we kept our legislative promise when we settled the Montoy lawsuit in 2006. So getting to the Montoy goal and adjusting for inflation has been our task throughout the Gannon lawsuit. So for all 8 years that it has been underway, that is what the court has been looking for. It's taken time, it's a process, it's messy. They call it sausage making for a reason. We can go in wanting what we want. I put a bill forward in February of 2017, House Bill 2270, reflected exactly what the Board of Education asked for in their budget recommendation. It was the full funding, it was a 4-year phase-in rather than a 6-year. We fully funded special education and we did a lot of wonderful things. Wanting those wonderful things did not turn out to be enough because we had to bring along the right coalition of lawmakers, so flexibility is key. I want to stipulate that I do not support changing our Constitution. That is not the problem. Legislative actions and capriciousness have been the problem leading to legal battles. I would echo the sentiment that the governor's race is critically important. You need to listen to the candidates who are running for office for the governor's position. You need to listen very carefully to what they're telling you, and I ask that you believe them because they are telling you exactly what they will do. I've worked with both of them. Chris Kobach is not right for Kansas. I do not support him for governor. Laura Kelly and I have been legislative partners on the school finance legislation. When she tells you she wants to be the education governor, you can believe her. So you need to listen carefully to what the governor candidates are telling you, and you need to believe them, and then you need to make your choice accordingly.
Okay, thank you both. On to question number 5. What types of economic development policies would you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas and attract new companies to the state? Melissa, you're first.
Well, thank you, Tom. We have a wealth of existing programs, HPIP, PEAK, STAR Bonds, Ad Astra, Rural Jobs Act. The problem that we have right now as a state is we don't have a good system for evaluating the return on investment to understand the value of those programs and whether they're paying off the dividends and job creation and economic growth that they promise. So to that end, we've been trying to get a bill through the House that would put some metrics in place, some measurements that we could use to evaluate those things. So that's crucial moving forward, that we don't embark on any new programs unless we have the ability to measure their efficacy and have some ability to claw back the incentives if they're not working. But they're very important to businesses. To attract business, you need to have some incentives. So I think that there's room to discuss a variety of those programs. Restoring the LLCs to the tax code has helped stabilize the budget, it's helped us invest in education, and it's helped other state services. So part of overall economic development is maintaining that stability and certainty for our business climate. Continuing to whipsaw back and forth with a variety of different changes to the tax code is not in the best interest of the state. We need to stick with the plan we have, we need to protect what we did, and we need to grow. We want the Department of Commerce to have as many options for attracting businesses, but each program needs to be held accountable, and we need to have transparency in that accountability program. A lot of our incentives focus on attracting business to Kansas versus growing businesses that exist in Kansas, so we probably need to put some things in place to help existing business owners invest and grow in the businesses that already exist here.
Thank you. Ree, your thoughts on economic development programs and policies?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of great ideas out there. One of the ones that is always attractive to me is investing in green energy here in Kansas. I think we are uniquely poised here to be the leader in the entire country in terms of wind turbine energy. We have the manufacturing capability, we have the infrastructure, we have the space. I think all of those lead to additional jobs and economic growth here. There are also a couple of different areas that are loosely tied to economic growth, but I think are vitally important. A long-term economic stability, which we have not seen here in Kansas, is crucial to economic growth. If people know how much money to expect in social services or budgets in state functions, they're going to be more likely to invest than if they're unstable, if they're unsure. investing in education, higher education, is long-term economic growth. Our employees are going to be higher skilled, they're going to be smarter. In addition to, as I mentioned before, enticing new businesses and new people to move to Kansas to grow our economy that way. Healthcare is economic development. The number one thing keeping people poor is healthcare costs. You know, if one bad day, one bad diagnosis, and your entire nest egg is gone, and I think that's unacceptable. If we give people affordable access to healthcare, they're able to hold on to their nest eggs and invest later on into things that they can use to further their economic development. And so all of these ideas in aggregate go a really long way towards a really thriving and developed economy.
Okay. Next question. Good lead-in. What are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid CanCare expansion? Reed, you're up first.
This is a really intensely personal issue for me. First of all, I support expanding Medicaid in Kansas, and I would support deprivatizing CanCare as well. I think it's led to a decrease in the quality of care. But this is so important to me in particular because my wife's mother passed away in large part because she could not get access to Medicaid in Missouri. A couple years ago, for a variety of reasons, we needed to move her up to Kansas City. And so my wife and I found the best apartment that we could pay for her. And the first thing that we wanted to do was to get her health care. Like a lot of people in the rural poor community, she hadn't seen a doctor in years. And so we decided to apply for Medicaid. But unfortunately, she was denied because she fell into the coverage gap. We looked at the prices on the marketplace at the time without any deductions. But there was just no way that my wife and I could afford them at the salaries that we were making at 23 years old. So fast forward a couple years, some health symptoms started showing up, but by then it was just too little, too late. She was 51, which is really young. I think back a lot actually about what would have happened if we were able to get her health care that first time that we looked, that first time we applied to Medicaid. It might have made a big difference, it might not have, but now at this point, we'll always be wondering what if. We are the richest country in the world. It is inhumane and immoral that we allow our people to die, good people to die, because politicians are playing a game of ideology and political capital and just choose not to expand Medicaid. I'm sure there are a lot of economic reasons to do so, and those are perfectly valid, but for me, it's a moral issue. It is the right thing to do, it is the best thing to do, and we just have to get people affordable access to health care.
Okay, Melissa, thoughts on healthcare and Medicaid expansion?
Well, I have voted to expand Medicaid. I have voted to override the governor's veto on the bill to expand Medicaid, and I happen to serve on the first committee in the House to hold hearings and work a bill and move it out of committee to expand Medicaid. It was a month-long process of holding hearings with healthcare stakeholders, hospitals, providers, patients, and every community organization involved came and testified. We developed a bill, we passed it out of committee. It was, it included what was known as the hospital pay for, so that the gap between what the federal government would pay and what the state share would be was actually covered by a special fee that the hospitals agreed to levy to pay to cover it, so it was revenue neutral to the state. Obviously that bill went nowhere, but I was very proud that in 2014 that was actually a signature achievement of the Vision 2020 committee. So long before the healthcare committees even held a hearing on Medicaid expansion, we had actually crafted the legislation. So I stand ready to cast that vote again and again and again until we get the job done. That is the number one issue when I'm dealing with constituents that I am helping them connect with is navigating our state system. We have a CanCare Oversight Committee that has made recommendations we need to enact, and we need to clean up the system so it works for our residents. I happen to have a constituent who's on permanent disability that is enough with his disability. He receives just enough to be in the gap. So he can't access the kinds of extra programs and services that he needs as he ages. He's finally old enough that we're starting to try and pursue Senior Care Act services for him, but his primary caregiver it has been incapacitated for the time being with her own issues that I won't go into, but helping him know that he's not alone and that we are going to get through this has been a pretty significant project in the last couple of weeks. So we need to do better, because I know how difficult and time-consuming it is for me as a state legislator to navigate the system, and I know who to call, and I can cut the line and get to the right people at the moment I need them. If it's difficult and time-consuming for me, it's compounded for ordinary citizens. So anything we can do to make that better needs to happen.
Okay, we're gonna give you, no? I thought we were gonna change the battery. My battery's still barely going. So